If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
Good evening. Hello. A lot of fucking people out there. We're gonna ease into this. Let's catch a couple small waves before we get some big ones. We want you to take care of each other. You're like a big ocean out there. Let's keep it calm, yeah? So happy to be here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen. Mama Queen. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Stone Gossard. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. We are officially on our Australia, New Zealand tour. By the time you listen to this, we are finished with the New Zealand portion. We have recorded at the point where we know what happened on Auckland Night 1, but not Auckland Night 2 just yet, so maybe some crazy things happen. Maybe we get another Grammy or something like that we might have to fill in Randy from the future again, just to get some clarity on, hey, okay, that actually happened. But we talked about Auckland last week, and we talked about a great show from 2009. And this week, we're going to talk about another show from 2009 in our next destination in Australia, which happens to be Melbourne. Melbourne, of course. So this is a Patreon request from our patron and friend, John McFarlane. I have not heard from him, unfortunately, but I want to throw that out there and thank him for making the request for this episode because, of course, with all of the shows that we get from requests from people, we love doing them, and this is, of course, an easy one to say for this time, just getting you guys excited, especially all you that listen from down in Australia and New Zealand, of course. So this is also kind of the first episode, and yes, we did have the reaction episode for Auckland Night 1 where I did address this, but this is the first time we've had a main platform episode since the results of the election, at least recorded-wise. And it's a time that's going to come with a lot of change. And, of course, this podcast has always been one that we're allowed to feel free to speak our minds, and we want to. And over the course of the years that we've been doing this, I've realized that starting arguments is not going to take us anywhere anymore. To get through the next 4 years, I think we as just citizens of not just the country, but the world need to be on the same page. I'm not saying we need to agree on everything, but we cannot continue to divide ourselves. And I know that feels like it's just taking pieces of Eddie's words and putting it there, and maybe some of it could be, but I felt it was a little bit necessary to say something before we started. That's about it. I want this to be as inclusive as possible. I want everybody to feel like they can listen to the show and listen to us talk about Pearl Jam. And for the most part, I think we've accomplished that. And on the socials as well, for those of you that are following the socials, let's make some progress. That's all I want to say is let's look ahead, let's look forward, let's do it without making each other miserable. And if we can get through that, I think we can get through a lot more. With that being said, Randy Sobel over here, the guru is over here or there joining us. What's up, buddy?
Not much. I'll second your thought. I think it's been a tough week for everyone, I guess. Sometimes change is hard. We got to go through the change, but we can do it as a community as well. So, like you said, not everybody's going to be thinking the same things, and that's okay. And we just need to be kind with another. That's all we can do. And it's a choice that you can always make too. So, there's nothing wrong to step away sometimes if it gets too noisy too. Nothing wrong with that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think for all of us, like I'm included in this. I need to take my own words as my own advice, and I don't always do. I'm human, and that's just going to happen sometimes. But I think me saying things like, let's not turn this into an argument, even though I can feel the need to want to make it an argument. We're all learning, man. It doesn't happen within a day. We don't see change within a day, within a year. Let's just work at it now. And by doing that, we talk about Pearl Jam, and that is the ultimate unifier here. So, well, sir. I think I invited you on this show because I like to torture my friends sometimes.
I know, it feels like it's a form of punishment.
It's not, because we get to spend time together, which is never punishment. We've already been talking for the last 2.5 hours or so. So not punishment at all, even though we've had a lot of things that we've had to say. Mm-hmm. Good things, and then some not so good things. But that's just what happens when good friends get to talking. Mm-hmm. But, I invite you on this because it's 2 weeks in a row that we do 2009, and we didn't hear from you last week, so I feel like it was necessary to hear from you this week, even though this is famously or infamously an era that you just absolutely do not enjoy.
Yes. I've always been trying to find a logical explanation about this, and I think I found one. A really good friend of mine, he's a sound engineer, and I was trying to kind of help me understand this. I think I know where I'm going, but I need a more a technical leeway to express myself. And he just walked me through a few things, and I think I finally figured out, or I guess I confirm my theory of why I don't like this era so much. Do you want to hear about that?
I've heard about it already, but I think that the people listening, of course, want to hear about this, because I'm not going to sit there and listen to my own podcast unless I'm editing it. So please share. That's what this whole thing is all about.
Right. So whatever platform you use to listen to the bootlegs, right? The sound quality is so good. So we're so lucky that we can get amazing quality for the bootlegs that we're listening right now. So for example, if you listen to Nugs, you can even take it on 360, Atmos space. It's pretty cool. When we go back to this year, I think it fits the need for the kind of song that the band was creating and writing at that point. But there are certain things that just don't work. So around this time, they were just trying to go all over mids. You have certain frequencies and guitars and basses and stuff like that when you have the high end, or you have the bottom end, and then you have that right middle thing that is called the mids, right? This year is so full of them that it doesn't let the song breathe, and you lose so many great things, like the bottom end of an instrument, or the high end, or the treble end over the instrument. So I was telling you a few examples where I think this kind of setting works. So for example, songs like Animal and Got Some, they're very frontal, they're very forward. So I think works. But then when you're listening the little nuances of songs like Even Flow, for example, like the Stone side, where his playing becomes very percussive and very like groovy, you lose those things. And I think the song becomes completely flat. Not because they are bad players or they're lacking dynamics when it comes to playing. It's just because the EQ that they chose at that point doesn't allow them to shine in the way that they need to shine. For the listeners to understand as well, like a beautiful song like Setting Sun, that it has so many little details. Will you imagine Setting Sun with this setting right now? Sorry, in 2009, and with that EQ, it wouldn't work at all because you wouldn't hear all the little tasty things that everybody's doing by themselves. And that's why, for me, this is so limiting because their live setting, their live performances are so dynamic because they're such good players, each one of them, that you need to taste all those differences. And I think I finally found a way that I can express myself about why I hate this time so much because I feel that they're wasting players because of the kind of setting that they chose to go with, you know?
Yes, I do. And sometimes when you speak so eloquently about this special information that you've gathered over the years, you're literally, we call you the guru because you know it all. And not just that, but remember, gurus are still learning as well. And they take in knowledge from every single place they can in order to expand themselves and be able to explain it to others so they can also, like a sponge, soak in that knowledge. And sometimes the knowledge can go straight over my head because I'm not a musician. I don't hear music in the same way. I can hear the intricacies, but when listening to this show, I didn't focus on the intricacies because that's not where my mind goes. I focus on energy, I focus on response. But the way that with you describing it, and we talked about this before, so you know what's coming. And if you guys need it dumbed down, like me, because I'm dumb, I'm not saying you're dumb, but you know, if
No,
you're
you're
me, then
not.
you're dumb.
No, you're not.
Take this for example. You take a toilet paper roll, an empty toilet paper roll. If you live in my house where, if you take your eyes off my kid for 2 seconds, all the toilet paper is out and on the floor. So you get the empty roll and you go and take the roll and then you go put it to your mouth. And I'm going to kind of mimic this with my hand right here. But you kind of get a sound that kind of sounds like this, almost like you're closing in on some of the audio that can expand. This is not expanding. This is one directional. This is omnidirectional here. This
You're
is
limiting.
going in. Yes, you're limiting what is going out to here. Almost like if you put your ear to the tube, you wouldn't want to do that with an actual tube amp. Please don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
PSA right there. Don't do that.
Yep.
If you do it with a paper towel roll, you can please do that. That's way more safe. You can hear directly what is coming from the other side. You won't get the enunciations. You won't get the little intricacies if I'm shuddering, if I'm doing something like that. Maybe do it like that. You won't get like the legit sound of what my tongue is doing. And that's a really, again, dumb example, but that's where we're here. It limits everything. It keeps it almost boxed up and it's not able to project. And this show has a roof. The show that we did last week did not have a roof. So when you think of last week, and we didn't bring this up because you weren't on the episode last week, but when you get a tube amp playing, and I want to know from you, when you play with a tube amp and you're outside, you're outdoors in the open air, how does that project?
That's a really good question. Well, depends because sometimes like when you're in open spaces, you can really push it with the volume too. I mean, you got to be careful, but it's kind of like the sound dissipates a lot too. Like you also have to consider the wind Because sometimes when you have like wind going, it's going to make the impression that actually you're playing less loud or more loud, depending on where the wind is blowing. But it's going to have this notion towards the PA and in front of the audience that maybe you're going to have like a more open sound. And the stage will sound a little different because the sound that you're hearing as the audience via the PA, it won't be the same feeling that you will get if you're like standing in front of the amp. But it's definitely going to have that sense of you're going to lose certain things and you're going to listen to a few specific notes that they're going to be more addressed to you. Now, the example that you give with the paper roll, it's the perfect example. Like you could have not described it in a better way.
I'm not so dumb.
No, you're not. That's pretty interesting because when you go back to this time too, they were using very specific equipment that they were like using for the same reason because it's going to limit them to that setting. And that's where like then later on they started to use different things and all that kind of stuff. But it's very interesting. I've always wondered, because if I remember interviews around that time, if you remember, they were always like, yeah, but we wanted to get back to the basics. We wanted to go back to this. It always feels to me that they wanted to sound live like it's a band rehearsing in somebody's garage. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like you want to strip it down to a point that you want to make it very, very basic and you want to make it very frontal for your audience. But some people really love this time. I feel that their music live needs a little bit more flavors. And I feel that we're missing flavors around this era.
I think that makes total sense because when you think about it, it's good for what you plan to record for this specific technique and the specific equipment that is needed for this. So songs like The Fixer and Got Some are specifically tailored, and that's exactly what you're trying to say here, specifically tailored to this sound.
And they sound great. And they sound great.
But also you have a back catalog of 8 other albums that don't tailor to that sound. Here's another example. Imagine trying to go on the binaural tour and have everything sound as Nothing As It Seems or Sleight of Hand sounded. You can't do that with those songs. It's a completely different technique that you lose something from those other songs because they aren't meant to sound like that. So I fully get that. They almost sacrifice their whole entire catalog for the new sound. And you make a good point, and I buy in onto it to an extent of it just doesn't bother me as much, but I get it. I'm just, again, I'm dumb and I just like the songs, but you're not supplementing what a song like Present Tense needs, what a song like Immortality needs.
And whenever you listen to Present Tense from this show, you can hear it, especially in the intro. Mike has so many different changes of pace and so many different changes in the intensity of the song. But this one is full on. It's just like the song has, like, when you can really, really hear little differences or details that he's playing. But in this one, the amp is just really, really screaming for mercy kind of thing. Like when you hear it, you're pushing it to a point that there's no escape. It's kind of like you're drowning and like the sound drowns a little bit to it. And for songs like this, I don't think it works. And maybe somebody else is going to disagree with me and they're going to like, well, this is a great version for me. Awesome. But for me, it's just like, I don't think you are really respecting the song in the way that it should be played.
We will get to that. We have a set list. If you guys really love the Gear Talk, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you are not as into it, but wanted to learn a little something, then I hope you got something out of it. Or I hope you just enjoyed me pretending to sing out of a paper towel, toilet paper roll. All right, let's start off. Ed starts the night by saying, "Good evening. There's a lot of fucking people out there. We're going to ease into this. Let's catch a couple of small waves before we get some big ones. And there's a lot of people out there, so you're like a big ocean. Let's keep it calm, yeah? Happy to be here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3.
I seem to recognize your face, haunting, familiar, yet I can't seem to place it. Can I find the candle of thought to light your name? Oh, lifetimes they're catching on with me. All these changes taking place. I wish I'd seen the place but no one's ever taken me. Hearts and thoughts, they fade away. Oh, hearts and thoughts, they fade away. I swear I recognize.
We talked about this when we did the React Respond episode about how Chris really said that there was a lot of emotion at a small town, that you have everybody singing together for the first time down there in 10 years. And I thought that this version really had an inspired feel to it, because you are getting what feels like the whole entire stadium singing back at you. And the way that when you build up to the big hello moment, it felt like the crowd bursts on that and they just get louder and they just get more involved. There's a warmth to this version that's very both anthemic and welcoming. And it's got that massive ending too, where it's like you almost don't want this song to end. And you know, I'm sure that you've picked this out, but there are versions of Small Town where they'll kind of have this little pause and do kind of a little instrumental thing in between where the bridge would end and the ending chorus would start to fade out. And they go direct. I believe that's how they do it on the album too. I think it's directly one to the other, because sometimes you get the away and then you get a little instrumental at the end. They go straight into it after this, which I thought was interesting, especially for an opener. So where are you with this? I thought this was a nice way to open the show.
Yeah, sets the tone. I really like this boot also because you can really hear the audience. I think the audience is a huge part of the show, and I think it was mixed with the intention also that there are certain moments that you're really going to hear the crowd a little bit more. But I like this version. I thought that it was a very good starter just to get it going, especially with the next three that you're going to get.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is all, you want to bottle up all that energy, you want to let it out. And Corduroy Animal got some following up on that. That is textbook right there for this era. So to me, I think the highlight is Animal from this. Sticks out to me not only because Ed is taking a few wine bottle swigs here, he's getting into the drinking on this night a little bit, but Mike sounds terrific on this solo. I think Animal is kind of that example that you were saying before as a song that could work or does work with the tube amps, because it comes direct. It's more of a direct sound instead of an intricate sound. I love the way that Mike not only lasts through the solo, but he kind of riffs on the ending too and kind of gave it a little bit of an edge to finish it as well. It was definitely inspired versions of these songs to kick off.
Yes, so this is one of the ones that I think that this setting for this era totally works. Just to clarify though, you just always remember that they use tube amps, like what we're trying to say about in the way that the sound is being like addressed or conceived is more about the EQ. Nowadays it's kind of a mix. Stone still uses tube amps. Mike is using everything like coming from a software, but that's a different topic of conversation whenever we get to that. Just circling back, I think this is a really good example. Got Some is a really good example before we get to the little cherry that is hidden here in the set.
Yeah, for as much as I have a distaste for Gotsum, I actually thought that Ed's vocal performance was really, really good on it. You're able to kind of hear him. And again, like the way that he kind of embellishes some of those lyrics on that, like his voice just gets kind of growly, like carry on, carry on. Like he does like these little things to give it some personality. And when Gotsum does have some personality, it sounded pretty good. So I didn't mind this version of Gotsum. And really, if Gotsum is the fourth song in the set, it's going to bother me a lot less than it is when it's the 23rd song in the set. So I'm happy enough to see it here. So it asks for a light on everyone to see if they're okay. And if you remember from last week, we had a lot of, all right, everybody take 3 steps back. You know, he was getting a little testy at times. He said, maintain, brother, maintain. At this show, everybody seems to be on the same wavelength. We seem to be on the same page. If there's a little congestion in front, they are giving people the open room, and Ed really doesn't have to address it at all. You know, he says, you're keeping yourself hydrated, you're giving each other space. We're going to be under this fucking roof for a long time tonight. So thanks to Liam and Ben for opening. Those are our brothers, and this song is called Brother. Seventh of 8 times that the song has been played. One of the rare guys. I know a lot of people that really do love this song. Some people whose initials are AR, I know like this song a whole lot, and we've talked about this. The last time that they had played this before was actually a show that both I and this AR character were at, which happens to be the Chicago Night 2 show from 2009. That was the second show that I ever went to. And that was a massive surprise because that's coming out when the Redux was out. And I remember the Redux being such a huge deal. You're getting these songs like 20,000 Mile Blues, whatever it's called. I can't ever remember the number. You got Evil Old Goat, you got Just a Girl, like these things that did not even make the cut for Lost Dogs. It's more stuff in the vault that got opened up to us. And not just that, but the whole 10 album getting a complete remodeling and a different sound was terrific. You know, songs like Garden and Deep like sound less straight from the 90s and more direct rock and roll sound, which I really appreciate, especially those 2 songs from the Redux I really like. Brother is from that era. It's an early song. I believe the first time they played it was within like the first 5 shows. And as we kind of knew it from the very beginning, Florentine Gardens, which was February 7th in 1991. They were still Mookie, of course. And Brother was played at that show. And I don't remember if that was the instrumental version or not. I will have to go back and check that out. But before this era, when the Redux came out, that's all we knew was the instrumental version to this. So they bring it out with lyrics, and it's played a couple of times in this year, and then one more time the following year when they were in Newark, right before those amazing Madison Square Garden shows. And you're now going on almost 15 years not playing this song. But if they play it the way they play it here, it's got some bite to it. It sounds like a song that should belong in a Pearl Jam set list. This was a lot of fun. I couldn't tell if Ed was looking down at his lyric sheet during this. It looked at moments like he could have been given a little peek, but they really nailed this version. I don't know why there was only one more, because this is a song that maybe should pop up every 5 years.
I have a theory about the song. I might be absolutely wrong, but every single time that I listen to Brother, it brings another song to my mind that I think they're very similar in a structure, which is Stardog Champion by Mother Love Bone. For some reason, I think they take me to the same headspace. And maybe that's why they left it out, because maybe they felt that it was way too similar to that. This version has a lot of bite, right? So you have those riffs that are like, did it, but then you have that mid-scale thing, did it. When you listen to Stardog, it's and you still have that middle thing with that power chord. Those two things, they sound very similar to me. And I think that's why they take me to the same headspace.
Interesting. I never would have put the two songs together, but it makes a whole lot of sense because, Stardog, I think probably would have been a single off of Apple had Andy not passed away. I think that one was kind of set to explode, like that and Man of Golden Words, and I think Chloe Crown were probably the cream of the crop of that record. That's a really interesting thought. I never would have put that together. But there's a cool moment from this. I mean, I love the little ending bit. Ed's getting really emotive in this where he's shouting, "Brother!" He's letting it go. It's a very, very fine Ed vocal show for sure. But ultimate checklist song. I'm sure that the majority of people listening right now are saying, yep, I wish I can get this one. I don't know how I got so lucky, but sometimes you got to be in the right spot in the right time. So, with 14 years, I don't know if this is one they'll consider, but hey, look, I think from this point forward, we have to say they did well song and Grammy, so we'll leave it at that.
You never know what you're going to get.
Exactly. Our next little section here is going to be Ocean Song, and then Flow of an Ocean, and then another Ocean Song, because the section is Amongst the Waves, Even Flow, and the ultimate ocean song, Oceans. Even Flow is definitely the sandwich between, but I mean, I guess the way the waves flow, you can kind of tie it in, I suppose.
Or maybe when you're riding amongst the wave, towards the flow of the water will take you towards the ocean.
Again, I'm dumb, so I don't get it.
Or maybe it's too late, Randy. Maybe we're both way tired and we're like,
Totally.
The solo of Even Flow. You remember that we were saying about like examples where certain things work for this time in certain songs. Guys, listen to the Even Flow solo. This is where I mean the guitar. It's kind of like they don't respond to everything that you want to do, and you feel that they're kind of drowning, a little choked. So I think maybe this is something that we can listen to, and you can kind of like analyze that and maybe trying to like make sense of what we're trying to say with this.
What doesn't make sense is that when you're watching this video, it's very clear that the camera person has the camcorder in hand, but fucking refuses to pan over to Mike. Like, during Even Flow, that is a federal crime. That's assault to the viewer right there. How can you not, and granted, I like watching Stone, and I enjoyed watching Stone on this, but how do you not decide to say, hey, what's happening over there? Move the camera over a little bit. Oh, well, that, as they say in the business, that's the best available video. It did not pan over. We only saw Mike when he jumped in the shot to go hang out with Stone or Ed. basically for almost the whole video. It was really just an awful experience watching the song, and it might have taken me out of it a little bit, even though, yeah, it's pretty piercing. I don't know if I share the same thought that you have specifically over this because I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but come on, man, show the video. Show it. Don't stiff us.
I know, especially because you know that this is Mike's moment. You know that it's coming in. Yeah, weird. I don't know why he didn't pound towards him.
The other thing we say in this business is don't cheat the reacts. And speaking of Mike, I don't know this for sure, but Ed dedicates Amongst the Waves, or actually after Amongst the Waves, which is a really nice version. I thought it was like a really uplifting version of the song, and a lot of what John was saying about Amongst the Waves, about sort of that upstroking, you're able to hear it in this version too. I wonder if that was something that Stone was just playing around with at the time. But after the song, he said that this was dedicated for Michelle and Ashley, and I'm wondering, I don't know the names of Mike's daughters, but I know his wife's name is Ashley. So do you think that could have been the dedication there?
Could be. Yeah, because Ashley's, that's the name of his wife, but I never knew the name of his kids. I think they have 3, I think. But
They do, and they definitely have at least one girl.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't know the names.
Look, if you are more tapped into Mike's personal life, then let us know if his daughter is indeed named Michelle, and we will feel validated by that. I think that would be pretty obvious that that would be the answer. We also have Oceans here, and I think that Ed had mentioned that Oceans wasn't on the set list, and it was dedicated to a friend who came in on 2 wheels. He doesn't say who this specific friend is, but apparently they came in on 2 wheels. The way that Even Flow kind of finishes up, like you're on a momentum swing, and to go into Oceans, it would kind of dip you down a little bit. And this is the point of the set where you can kind of bring up a storyline here. So Oceans doesn't have like the same balance that it does. I like this version too. I just want to put it out there. I do like this version. This is not like a criticism. It's just an observation. It's just very much on the front foot, very much upbeat. The chords are a lot heavier. The song feels a lot more kind of the era, I suppose. Just like everything is accelerated just a little bit more. And I wonder if that is taking momentum from Even Flow and just continuing to capitalize off of it. But Oceans is not one of these versions where it feels like a love song, essentially, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. Ed says, I was given this jersey by a guy named Ross Knight, who played for the Cosmic Psychos. This is all stuff I'm very knowledgeable in. He shows the jersey to the crowd. I think he gets some cheers. I think he gets some boos. And apparently Ross is there. And then he says, this one is dedicated to a drinking buddy who's at home tonight. His name is Matt Lucan. Lucan, green disease, force of nature, present tense. All bang, 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 bang in a row. So I want to bring up something about green disease. This has kind of been a little bit of a topic. Last week we heard MFC, and I want to shout out Steve McCallum for getting in touch on Instagram, kind of explaining why you might hear a little bit of the green disease intro within a little bit of Untitled or MFC. And I think the way that he posed it to me is that it's like the same strings on a lower end of the guitar neck. Is that true? Where you can just slide up, like you're down and you can play Green Disease, you can just slide up and play MFC. Does that make sense?
Yes, because my memory is correct. I'm going through my chords in the data center. How's it on my head? Just give me just a second.
Oh my God, the data center. How do I get a ticket?
It's MS2, so it takes a little longer. This is vintage. It's from '84.
I'm gonna act like I know that reference.
Untitled MFC. I was gonna say it totally makes sense. It's because it has to be the same chord shape in a different position of the neck. That's why it gives you like the same kind of like open ring that you get with MFC and Untitled. So yeah, most likely it is the same chord shape that Ed does, but in a different position of the neck, in a different space.
Interesting. Now, I'm going to throw another curveball at you. The riff to get you into start the bridge, I should say, of present tense. Is that also, and this is just me just hearing something similar, is that also within the same chord shape? Because it feels like it has the same demeanor as both the intro to MFC and Green Disease. Is that like the where am I at on this?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's a very similar shape, to be honest with you, because they tend to play with that little thing in very different spaces. Another clue that I'm going to give you, for example, insignificance.
Yeah, good call.
They kind of play with that shape as well, that they let certain things ring or sometimes like you have certain spaces when you press the string and then you're going to have the same note that the string right next to it. So it feels like you're playing more like an open chord, but it's with a very, very specific intention. RVM is another example. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something very similar that they're just trying to like play with that.
I think I sound a little smart right now. I think I'm like progressing out of this. Now I need to learn how to actually play an instrument.
Randy, you're very smart, and actually, I think you still have a very good pedal that I told you not to sell. So maybe you need to use it.
I do. It's too bad I don't have an amp anymore. But
that can be fixed.
Yep, always with money, lots of it. What was the highlight for you here? I think we'll get into your point about present tense in just a second, but we also have Force of Nature as well. I believe we had Force of Nature last week, so this was something that it seemed like, and they did play this 2 shows before this show, so it seemed like to play around with Force of Nature, this is probably the place where they utilized it the most in the 11 times that it was played. So they're giving it some airtime here. Why do you think that they don't go back to it, or really haven't gone back to it since 2010?
It's voice.
Okay.
Because any song that they want to go back from this album, I think that's the reason why they don't do it. That this is the tour where Ed was really pushing his voice to a point that maybe we had kind of like a point of no return, that maybe some damage was done. I think in between 2006 and 2009, he really pushed himself to be a different singer, just to add like an extra layer. For some reason, it always reminds me kind of like listening to Daltrey at The Who, when you listen to the first couple of albums and then it's kind of like he takes this break and take this turn just to be a different singer and maybe just to add more stuff to your own catalog as a performer. This version sounds great. I love the little like riff on the intro that Stone makes, even though that is so simple, it adds so much to the song. But I don't think that they will review it unless they find a way to play it that is comfortable, because I feel if they completely go one full step down, I think the power of the vocal that is needed for the song is not going to be there. Not because Ed cannot perform with power, it's just the fact that it's going to be so low that it defeats the purpose, if that makes sense.
Let's ask you here, because we talked about it before, the abridged version of what you said about present tense. We're going to play it right here. What are we listening for?
Guitar drop, data gag, tuning, just to play in an open D. But if you listen to the intro, no matter how much Mike is trying to make the effort just to play it with the subtlety of the song, or maybe to make it less intense or more intense, it sounds flat. It is not because he cannot perform in that way or he cannot deliver that. It's just the EQ that they were using at that time. It doesn't allow you to go anything further than that. So that's why it sounds so flat. So I think what you're listening right now, it's a really good example of what we were talking before.
Have you seen the way that tree bends? Does it inspire? They're leaning out to catch the sun's something out of this whole encompassing trip.
We're going to get another very rare Backspacer song here, and it's dedicated to a friend named Nick Cave. But the Bad Seeds, no, sorry, it's not dedicated to you guys. You guys suck, right? Just kidding. The Bad Seeds are fantastic. Gonna See My Friend. We're going to do that into Given a Fly and Daughter following. Gonna See My Friend. I had a thought about what guitar Ed was using. It was blue. It was kind of like a hollow body, and it had almost like a tinny sound to it, like a jangly or tinny sound to it. What is that? What is
that
the sound we're hearing?
Is
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
the race stripe? The
Yes.
blue with the race stripes. The blue guitar is a Duesenberg that is a Mike Campbell anniversary guitar. And Mike Campbell played for whom?
Tom Petty and the goddamn Heartbreakers.
Exactly. So that's where we have a connection that probably he was trying to honor one of his heroes, or he really liked the guitar. He got it as a gift, but that's the guitar that he was using.
I'm glad you brought him up because he's relevant to something happening right now. So next week, next Friday, or actually as you're listening to this, it's the Friday of the week of, if you're listening to this when this just comes out, there is a tribute called The Last Waltz for the band that's happening in Rochester. And I wish I could fucking go because Mike Campbell and Ben Montench are both playing. But I can't go because that's the last week of the high school football season for me, and it's at the JMA Wireless Dome, and I got to make TV happen. So I have to miss that. That sucks, right?
It does suck. It's in Rochester, Minnesota?
No. I have a funny story about Rochester, Minnesota, but I'm not going to share that here. But it is about somebody confusing Rochester, New York for Rochester, Minnesota. So
like me.
At least you didn't take a plane to the wrong location. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that's bad. That's pretty bad.
So, Gonna See My Friend, it's the 9th of 15 times. Not gonna see this friend much anymore. Probably one of those songs, Ed, especially, you talk about Force of Nature, you cannot sing this in the more recent-ish versions. I believe like the Philly 2016 one, I think he had a tough time with. But it's always been a song I gravitate towards because I love the album openers, and it just screams at you right away. So I wish that this could have been a more popular one, but what can you do? Talks about a guy named Mark Richardson retiring, and I googled that name, and it was somebody that played cricket from New Zealand, and we're gonna find out the story about why that's all wrong in a few minutes or so. But that is before Given a Fly, and my point on Given a Fly is that he's talking about this guy, quote unquote, Mark Richardson, is retiring. Given a Fly is always that song that's like the go-to celebrating an athlete's accomplishment song. You know what I mean? That's the song that they played for Chris Chelios. That's the song that they played after talking about the Gaudreau brothers. Like, it's always for somebody that has rose to the occasion and excelled. And it's not just sports, but it feels like it has that athletic prowess to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because like you said, it's kind of like you're celebrating like an achievement or celebrating a career. But I get why they would pick this song to just to honor whatever career that they were mentioning or whoever is going to get a shout. But I get why Given to Fly will be the go-to or the right choice for this.
This is an accomplishment. It feels like you rose to the challenge. Said, "Well, fuckers, I still stand. Like, look at me. I'm going to the Hall of Fame. Like, less than 1% of people that have played these games go to the Hall of Fame. Whatever it is." I think that's his way of saluting the athletes out there. Daughter finishes that all bit out, and I think Ed's introduction to this being a song about wanting boomerangs over guns. And you think, really? Is that what that's about? No, Glorified G is not the next song that's going to come after Daughter. He reverses course and says it's a song about daughters wanting fathers over boomerangs or guns. So make that make sense. Good participation on Daughter, especially when it comes to the another brick in the wall tag. I think that's going to always get a good reaction no matter what. Now to close the main set here is Glorified G, the aforementioned, The Fixer, and Evolution. Now I'm going to get into a little bit of a point of how I felt about the main set. And it's just observations instead of criticisms. I know that sometimes it can kind of sound like I'm making criticisms, but really I am making observations. I hope that comes across sometimes. Sometimes I think about that people think I'm a little bit too nitpicky on stuff, but I'm just making observations on everything. So my observation on this is that I see that there are fun performances here, a good crowd response, but also the set doesn't have a whole lot of balance to it. It feels like very similar songs that just keep going from one to the next to the next to the next. Like if you had a more true version of Oceans that had more of a balanced pace and kind of, again, like I said, felt like the love song that it is, maybe that changes things up. Maybe that starts to build back your wave. Present Tense kind of did that, but I think what you got after was you got 6 more songs that all really bled together. And maybe they're not all similar, but there was no discernible, like, wow, that version is completely better and different than this one. They were all fine, and they probably sounded good when you're there. And when you're there, you're going to enjoy them for sure. But I didn't get the sense of we have a big moment here.
For me, it gets choppy. It's like you're driving in a street and you just get going and then you have a red light. And then you get going and you have another red light. That's how it feels for me, you know?
Yeah, and it's weird that you say that because there isn't a whole lot of talking. Granted, the last couple of songs we did have quick dedications, like, hey, shout out to Nick Cave, shout out to here's what Daughter's about, Mark Richardson. Not really Mark Richardson, but it does feel a little stop and go, and maybe that is why you can put it there. But also, like, there's no story to it either. It's just a collection of songs. I don't want to say without a purpose, but where the potential for purpose isn't there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. It totally does. But yeah, I agree with you.
There's going to be a massive moment that comes in the encore that I'm like, there it is. There's the moment to take away from this show. It's there, and we'll talk about it very, very soon. Brother's probably the talking point of the main set, but the moment of the show is going to happen in Encore 1. Hang on to that point. At the Encore, let's pause for station identification real quick. We'll make this tidy here. Remember, we got the React Respond episodes going on over on our Patreon. The Auckland episodes are out now. We'll obviously get to Melbourne's. We'll get to the one Gold Coast show, and we'll get to the Sydney shows. And that'll be that for the year. So if you want to know what's going on, if you want to be clued in, all of the reaction episodes are up over there. All you got to do is sign up, help the show, donate a little bit, and help us out to what we're doing and helping us expand and grow and come up with more ways where we can implement the podcast for the future. that's a way to help us progress, and it keeps contributing. And for that, we give you guys some special content, including the React Respond episodes. So if you want all of that, it's patreon.com/live on four legs, or you can download the Patreon app and search for Live on Four Legs, or you can go to liveonfourlegs.com. The Concertpedia articles should be up very, very soon. If they're not already, I'm sure they will be this week. You can go and read up on those and see what you missed from the shows if you are not part of Patreon. But hey, look, you don't get opinions on the Concertpedia. You get opinions. You get to hear from people that were there on the React Respond episodes. We had a good one from Chris and Alex this past weekend. So if you want to hear what the guys have to say directly after the show, that's the place you're going to hear it. Our quote unquote instant, because it's kind of coming out 24 hours later. It's not quite instant reaction, but it's a reaction. So we'll leave it at that. Those episodes will all be happening over on our Patreon. So if you do what I suggested to do, donate a little bit and help us out, you will get access to those. All right, back to the rock. Ed is out by himself with an acoustic guitar saying, "Hey, how's everybody?" I know the last few times we were here, we played 3 times at Rod Laver, which is the other stadium. We are going into the 16th and 17th time that they are playing in Melbourne, and I believe Rod Laver, I have to look this up, but I believe it's a top 5 venue that Pearl Jam has played in terms of times that they've played there. So it's like Madison Square Garden, it's the Camden, whatever they want to call it now. I can't remember the name, Freedom, Mortgage Freedom or whatever it is. That's one that they played a whole lot. But I think that one is considered in the top 5, if I am not mistaken. Anyway, we're going to get to find out who Mark Richardson actually is. He says here, it's Matthew Richardson, not Mark Richardson. Corrects himself and says he's an Aussie rules football player. Look, we all make mistakes. I think Mark Richards, he said, was a surfer, if I'm not mistaken. So, look, I would have never figured it out on my own. So I'm glad we could have been here, and I could have thought he was the cricket player that I had Googled and saw earlier. So I'm glad somebody got it right? Anyway, he asked everyone if they saw Liam Finn. He played a Neil song earlier that sounded good in this room, so I thought I'd try another attempt. So I was trying to look for the Neil song that Liam and EJ Barnes covered, and I'm looking at a listing here for a show that happened in June of 2008 where they covered Old Man. And I wonder if that was probably it, because that is of the era. It's only a year apart. And when searching for Liam Finn, Neil Young cover, because there's no set list attached to this, there's no note in 2 Feet Thick, and I did not check the fan view of this. That might have it, but I kind of doubt would. There's a couple of versions I see of Old Man, and the only other Neil song that I see that Liam Finn is attached to happens to be, well, this one, Needle and the Damage Done. So if Liam is going to do one, then Ed's going to do the other, I suppose. So that's what we're going here. So it's going to be Needle into Just Breathe. We're actually going to be talking about Needle yet again next week, and that has a very special guest on that version. I believe he's a little P. If you get that reference, then you know exactly who it is. So I don't want to waste the discussion on this outside of saying that amazingly, we somehow have covered now after next week, we'll be on 5 of the 7 versions and only need 2 more to complete that discography, I suppose. But most of the time when you hear Ed sing Needle and Damage Done, especially, he's making a very powerful attempt to channel Neil's voice. But I think in this one, he keeps it pretty original to his own sound. He isn't trying desperately to have the Neil falsetto to him, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what we were saying before too, because the games that they both do at this song, I think it feels like it's more him not trying to make an attempt to sound like somebody else.
We've talked about that, I think, fairly recently, that there's certain artists that he cannot help himself with. One of them being Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
And sometimes he does get on the Neil Young bandwagon, and Neil can tend to have like a little squeak in his voice almost. Like, Neil almost sounds like he hasn't hit puberty sometimes. Or he's about to. You know? I'm going to call it for what it is. He has a little bit of like a choir boy voice, but also like he can't go higher than what he can go because his voice will crack a little bit. It's so like delicate and just towing a line of what he can do that if he goes any higher, I think he'd crack. So he's not trying to do any of that, but I love Neil. I think we all love Neil. If anybody has one of those New York Mets Neil Young hats where the N and the Y are, I want one. So please send it my way. Anyway, Just Breathe following dedicates that to Jaika, who's on the side stage. It's very similar from last week. Yes, it has the bass. It's not a version that has quite hit the emotional depths of where the song can take you. But in this version, Ed does acknowledge at the end that he fucks something up there and apologizes. I didn't catch what it could have been, did you?
Didn't notice.
Then I guess he got away with murder there, I suppose. So now you're going to get to the portion of the set where it is the Ben Harper show. Last week we talked about one of the Ben Harper staples that they've played. That'd be Red Mosquito, and that is back, of course. I think this was every night they were doing Red Mosquito. But also, the other Ben Harper special happens to be Indifference. And no, these are not the two moments that I was alluding to before, even though Indifference is a very, very good moment. This is not like the show-stopping moment that is going to come in this encore. So just teeing you up for that. I mentioned a lot about the Red Mosquito stuff and the slide guitar, lap guitar, steel guitar. What would you like to call it? What do you usually call it?
It is a lap steel guitar.
Lap steel guitar. Okay. We were 2/3 of the way there, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a lap steel with a... Ben always plays that kind of instrument with a little pedal board, which I think is super unique because a lot of people don't tend to go that direction. They want to make it more authentic, if you want to say it that way, just like the lap steel guitar towards the amp. But he's a little different and he's brave, and he just gets his little board in front of it, and you get like a really good wah out of that too, which I think it makes it very original.
Unlike last week, we do have a video for this, and yes, Ben is actually in the shot, believe it or not. He's not all the way on Mike's side, so it counted. But when I'm watching him on this, and I've noticed this before, the way that he plucks at the strings when that thing is on his lap, it's so aggressive. It's like he's aggressively tapping a typewriter or just like yanking at the strings. He's like really jamming his fingers in there. It's just very aggressive looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he gets intense, and sometimes you're going to see different kind of players that they play the lap steel that they are a little bit more gentle, but Ben just dig into the string, and there's nothing wrong with that. And when you listen to the recording, that's why it has such a raw, very intense sound. It's just in the way that he's attacking the strings and the way he's playing it. It's just who it is as a player with the lap steel.
Mike comes over in this. What'd you hear out of the little dual section at the end?
There's a lot of fun stuff going on there, but there's a lot of soloing back and forth, and it gets a little messy, but it's fun. I mean, they're not trying to follow what the other one is doing at all times, which is, I think, it makes it a little bit more interesting sometimes.
Afterwards, they dig into Indifference, and although they don't play Indifference as much as they play Red Mosquito in 2009, the majority of the versions that they play this year, they played it 9 times in total. Ben is on 7 of those, and that's including a couple shows in the States, including Vancouver. The only time he was on a version where it closed happened to be in Universal City, which is outside of LA or in LA, essentially LA, I suppose. And he did it 5 times down in Australia and New Zealand. So this is something that they were doing a whole lot. And if you listened a while back, we did the Indifference Evolution episode that happened to be on our Patreon and still is on our Patreon. If you have joined and subscribed, thanks to the React Respond episodes, then you can also see that there's a playlist on the homepage for the evolution episodes, which are fantastic. And at some point we will get back into, there's just not enough hours in the day. You know what I mean? But Ben has been a staple for Indifference and kind of has been almost the glue that has kept this song from fading out completely in sets, because he's been on a bunch of versions within a bunch of eras. I think we know that there are a couple of different Madison Square Garden versions. The first time he did it happened to be in 98, and then did it again famously in 2003, where Ben really took over the show. But I love listening to him on this. I think his voice just emotes so much power. He takes the first verse and goes off, and then I love kind of like him and Ed going back and forth. Ed takes the second verse. When they start to get to this "I'll swallow poison," that's when you just hear him absolutely shatter the glass ceiling.
I will swallow poison until I crave you.
I will scream my lungs out till it fills this room. How much difference does it make? How much difference does it make? Oh, how much difference does it make? Oh, how much difference?
He's a good fit for this kind of song. I would have loved to see it more maybe towards the end, though. Going back to what we were saying, that you had like the highway red light. You go and then a stop. You go and then a stop. But it makes sense. It was the guest just to play the song. But Ben also adds maybe like a different emotional dimension to the song, too. I think the song is already heavy for what it already is. But when he's performing the song with the band, he can take it to a different level. It maybe takes a different turn towards a different meaning.
I absolutely agree with you that because if you're playing Red Mosquito, it makes sense that they're back to back. But also, Red Mosquito could have been an encore too, and you could have done Red Mosquito into Indifference into Alive, and I think that could have really solidified that part and made for good moments there. But yeah, in the middle here, maybe it doesn't get talked about as much because you're going to follow this up with, as I'm going to talk about, the 10 barrage, the barrage of 10 songs that are about to come. And I don't know if that would get lost in any of that, but again, in that barrage of 10 songs is the show-stopping moment, and it probably shouldn't have been outdone because it deserved to be one of the big moments, and it is. I think it still is. But I have to mention, too, Ben and Ed's harmony at the end, where they do the every time. That's like a heart melter right there. That is, I love, love, love hearing that. We'll talk about more harmonies when it comes to Liam Finn in a second or two. But you want to go into this 10 barrage. Jeremy, Deep, Why Go, Porch. I have talked about the 10 barrage before. I believe it's that second Chicago night you and I were sitting together for that one, where I think it was like after Marker in the Sand. It was the 10 show. It was black, deep,
Yep.
Wygo, just punch, 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 one after the other. This is a boxer that after like the 6th round has worn out his opponent enough where he knows, okay, here it's coming. My first hit's going to be Jeremy. This one's going to push you back a little bit. It's going to set everything up. You're going to still kind of be on your feet, but you're going to be wobbly and you're going to take the next couple of shots and you're done. But Jeremy's the first one where you're like, yup, match over. You can tell this is happening, but he ain't down yet, so you're not going to stop punching up. Deep, bam, another jab. Why go? You hit him again, and you're just bombarding this crowd. I guess the crowd is getting hit, is what it is. And then for good measure, the inevitable knockout punch is fucking Porch. And that, my friends, is the show-stopping moment from this. 100%. The 10 barrage kind of gets packaged together, and Jeremy, I think, is fantastic because Ed is running all over the stage and gets everybody doing the whoa-ohs, and you know how it is. And Mike was kind of adding a little like surf rock delay chord on that. Did you hear that? Did you notice it?
Yeah, that was kind of like a fresh approach. It was a little different than the other versions, for sure.
Porch is the one from this show. You know, you get into the jam, you get all 3 guitarists. Tough for me to want to call Jeff a guitarist, but he's using a guitar-shaped instrument, so it's a bass guitarist. They're all huddled around the drum kit, going after it, one after the other. And then after a while, Stone kind of breaks from the pack, and he just takes over the fucking solo. And good God, is Stone fucking unleashed on this. Now, it's not as rare as you think to get a Stone solo. He does have them. Not For You, Rockin' in the Free World, Do the Evolution, it will come up. However, whenever Stone gets into it, you're like, haha, it's goofy Stone. You know, he's just kind of like doing his thing. He's making weird faces and his hair's flopping. You know, just Stone. It's funny. For some reason in this version, dare I say it, but something must have struck a chord within his inner being that turned him into the rock god that we know usually of Mike to be. We don't think of Stone being a rock god. When you think of him, he's an architect. And that's different. The architect builds the songs. He's the creator. And the god is the one that shreds everything and tears it all down. The flashy one, the one that you gravitate towards. You want to go to Mike's side instead of Stone's side. I love going to Stone's side. I love going to Mike's side. But Mike's side is always going to be more crowded than Stone's side. He looked like an absolute hero out there. And you felt it. Within his solo, he is absolutely wailing away. He's tearing a hole through the ceiling. They talked about the roof and wanting to blow the roof off. Well, Stone is the one to blow it off on this. I was so fucking impressed. He made that damn guitar squeal. Fucking hang this in the Louvre. Come on. What'd you think?
I think by choice, he decides not to show that side all the time. It's so fun to see him when he just gets not contained. Because, like you said, he's the architect, right? Like, he needs to establish the song. He needs to set the tempo. He's making the call to see, like, okay, where are we going after that jam? But when he lets go, it's just, give me more of that. And it's very cool to see how everybody else reacts towards that. You know what I mean? The band also like, okay, let's go. The focal point is him right now, and everybody's going to kind of like take one step back, and then we're just going to let him shine for a little bit. I think we need more Stone in this Stone version of the unleashed Stone version that we can get out of this.
Please, please, please bring him back. We love the duck. We love the duck walk. We love the nerdy Stone. We love orange creamsicle beanie Stone. But we need Rock God Stone. Encore 2. Stone's not coming out after Encore 2. After all that, he needs a break, apparently. Boo. There's a massive reaction to get them to come back out there, and it feels like it's being delayed a little bit. It feels like the crowd is really like hanging on to this, and they keep like stomping, almost like sounding like it's stomping on metal grates. So Ed comes out and he says, "Do you want some more?" I can't say no to that. When you're in a band, and I have 3 younger brothers, but when you're in a band, you don't just get band members in your life, you get brothers. For you to support this band of brothers for all these years, allowing us to come to a place like this to let us play in front of you, we really appreciate it. He invites Liam Finn onto the stage, says they're going to busk one, and this one is one where you're supposed to bust the roof open on. I think that Stone already broke it for you guys, so you'll have no problem doing that. That's where you get throw your arms around me. This is what I was saying before about the harmonies here. I think it's interesting because they both take different verses of the song and kind of reverse roles. So Liam takes the first verse, and then you hear Ed kind of doing some of those flourishes for the high parts, and they sound phenomenal.
You know that I could never say goodbye. And though I try to forget it, you will make me call your name as I shout into the blue summer sky. And we may never meet again, so shed your skin and let's get started. And you will throw your arms around me. Your arms around me.
And sometimes when you listen to Ed, you're like, that's a pretty good singer. And yeah, you get times where you're like, whoa, he's truly amazing. But it's weird because you don't have much to compare it with when you're just listening to what he's doing. And when he's alongside Liam and they switch roles where Ed is doing the verse and Liam's doing the same for him, I know that Liam is not like some sort of well-regarded singer. He does what he does and he does it very well. But man, you can tell how elite Ed sounds and how incredible his voice sounds when projecting it as opposed to what Liam does in his harmony. You're able to know and recognize, oh, Ed has some talent here.
It's pretty similar to what they do now with Falling Slowly too. It's kind of like you see Ed from a different perspective. It's just a different thing that he's doing with his voice, and like you said, you just really appreciate the good singer that he really is, and moves him away from that spectrum that everybody knows him for, and he's kind of like showing you a different thing, which is always appreciated when you see that version of Ed. And when we have the luck just to hear versions like this or Falling Slowly, like I was quoting, that's an example too.
Very nice performance here. Good to see the duo. Obviously, Liam was joining in on Habit this past weekend, and who knows, maybe Crowded House got involved on the Sunday show. That's not something we know as we're recording right now, but I'll open the floodgates for future Randy if he wants to jump in. My beautiful friend from the past, I am so glad that you said something during Throw Your Arms Around Me, because that is exactly what happened. Neil Finn came out. They did a beautiful rendition of Throw Your Arms Around Me that I'm still listening to nonstop a day or two afterwards. And it was incredible. One of the best moments of the year, dare I say. It could possibly be in the next 2 weeks, the best moment of the Australia-New Zealand tour. Who knows? But that's exactly what happened. You were right on the money with that. Congratulations. I wish I can go back in the past and just give you a high five. So good job on that. And for future Randy's sake, I'll keep trying to make these kind of predictions and see if they stick from here on out, because I'm on a good roll right now. I'm going to just keep it up. And there you go. Black, Spin the Black. Speaking of Ed's pipes, good Lord, he lets it all go, holding out the B, yeah, like he lets that run. He doesn't do the yeah, he lets that hang and just sits there, and that's one of those things, if you've seen that live, which I know I have, like you're in awe of that. And like midway through, when people are just start clapping and start kind of encouraging him, that's a moment right there. So Black was a fantastic version. Mike also wants a piece of that roof, so he's sending electric shocks into the air for sure. And then the ending sort of kind of fades out very nicely. There's no "we belong together" tag, nothing like that, just very delicate. But you go from delicate into maniacal, a wild off-the-rail versions of Spin, especially as the pre-song to Alive. These three songs, they're mostly songs that we have, the first four, they all have differing tempos here. So you got to make them work, you got to make them fit within each other. And it's interesting the way that they were able to do that, especially Black into Spin the Black Circle is such a wild juxtaposition that it just kind of throws you for a loop a little bit, but you're engaged right away.
Spin the Black Circle has a lot of rockabilly stuff. And for some reason,
thought that.
And for some reason, I thought in this one it was a little bit more enhanced. Mike was playing with something a little different that he wanted to try. But when I was listening to this, it was just like, ooh, that kind of sounds like a little different. And he was just riffing back and forth and added a different spectrum to a very really good song that everybody likes, right? But I just thought that it had a different taste for some reason, that maybe he was trying little riffs here and there.
I couldn't put my finger on it, but yeah, I think there is some extra mustard into this, and I think it is coming from Mike. So your bread and butter, you're closing out the show. Alive, Baba, Ledbetter. Usually we have fun and celebrate at the end of the show. You get the house lights on, and you want to see everybody, and you want to have a fun time, and you're going to do a cover. You're going to do Ledbetter as everybody get together and one last song and sing with each other, have your arms around each other. And usually Alive is that song that starts the fun. Or even if you want to, in some sets, the whole entire encore is the fun section. But I think that this version of Alive was an all-gas power rendition. And we don't really focus on that with, I guess, the modern-day versions of Alive, because it does kind of have a role. And it's funny because the last episode that we did, the Fixer was in the Alive spot, so we didn't get to see what Alive could do in that set in this era. But sometimes when you're just trying to focus on the fun aspects of the song, it's not like you can lose the showstopper route, but that's not the goal. I think for this version, the goal of this performance was for this song to be a showstopper and blow people away and not be a communal song. It's a communal song by proxy, but I don't think that the band was making that attempt. I think they were on the front foot with this one and blasting it out. I was very impressed. You don't usually put the two together, be like, okay, which versions sound like this, which versions sound like that, but I think this was better than a celebratory moment.
Yeah, you were saying something about that, and I also thought that it had a lot of gas. But sometimes I wonder, like, are they really trying to like to hit the gas with the song, or they're just running out of time?
Yeah, right.
And they're like, okay, we need to play it hard and quick. Like, let's go, you know?
And there's tambourines that get involved. In a way, it's like kitschy almost. You want a live to have some feeling behind it, some meaning behind it. Like when you do, and yes, they do it in this version, but when you do the sarcastic, of course there is, like, it's part of the celebration. It's part of everybody having a good time with it. But give it some focus, give it some meat, give it some attitude towards it, and it still can blow people's minds and be the showstopper it's meant to be. And I think this version they covered. Baba, Ledbetter, these are fun. That's the true party performance right there. It gets the crowd up and excited. And then into Ledbetter, he's kind of at a loss for words during the intro. He says, "Melbourne, you're fucking beautiful." And then Mike kind of trails off and says thank you, and Mike kind of starts the riff. And under the riff, you hear him say, "Unbelievable." Just looking out towards this crowd and just being in amazement. And you can tell anytime that they're in a crowd where they don't get to see every other year, they take it in. You should know that as well as anybody, because that's right there the definition of the South American crowd, where he's just looking out and being like, wow, everybody here is here for the same purpose, and they're celebrating the same thing, and they're celebrating us, and there's not just us, but they're celebrating music and the power of music. And I think he takes a moment to take that in, and it's fun to see develop.
Hopefully next year. I know that people are waiting for them, so it's about time.
I will not disagree with you. I will not argue with that at all.
And Randy, what is Mike playing at the end of Yellow Ledbetter too?
That's a good question. That's a good thing I asked everybody and got the same answer. Well, I am not very privy to, I guess, the whole entire AC/DC catalog. I probably haven't listened to a full AC/DC album since I was about 15. So they're not a band I go back to. Every single high school football game I've worked this year, I've heard Thunderstruck and Hell's Bells, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, hey, I really want to hear these songs on Spotify. So I'm not going to go back to a song like Whole Lotta Rosie very often. And even that is not an AC/DC song that I'm familiar with at all. I watched a live rendition of it, and it sounded like it was meant to be a hit. I'll say that, but I did not know what this song was. Are you a bigger AC/DC fan than I am?
I don't think so. I mean, they're my catalog, but when you were asking around, I had no clue. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what song is that. So I declare myself an ignorant about AC/DC and what they were playing. So
They obviously do it because Australian rules, rock and roll, I suppose. And that is our set. Thank you to everybody who pointed us in the right direction, but mostly thank you to Danny, because she was the first one that actually did. And yeah, I like when people can right my wrongs or, prove that I'm an idiot. That's why we do this episode today, because I've been an idiot in this one, but maybe not as much as I let on. Anyway, we have 3 to pick from here. Let's pick top 3 moments. Go ahead, sir.
my number 3 is going to be Gonna See My Friend. My number 2 is going to be Brother. And my number 1, it's not going to be Porch. My number 1 is going to be Small Town, because I think that they set the tone perfectly fine for the show with that one.
Ugh. Sir, you need to
Did I ruin
re-
yours?
rethink some things over in your life. You need to
Wow.
contemplate where you're going here, because it's like I don't know you. Be honest with you.
Wow.
Anybody that's not picking this number one, I don't get. But I will agree with you on Brother. That's going to be my number 3. Indifference is going to be my number 2. And The Fixer is going to be my number. No, it's going to be Porch. That's pretty clear. All right. Well, does Porch factor into your rating on this? I know that maybe the 2 Bamps might, but let's see where we both are on it.
I'm going to try to be very fair, and I'm going to remove all the bias that I have towards this era for 10 seconds. I'm going to try really hard. For me, this is a solid 8.5. I like certain songs here that they make sense to me, but I mean, the audience, it was so present in every single song of the show too. So I thought the emotional connection too that I obtained, even though that I was not present in the show, I think I felt that connection with the audience. So for me, it's a very good 8.5.
You're actually higher than I am. I'm not going to go that high. And I think that's probably the main set, and some of the points that I made about the main set just felt like it didn't have those ebbs and flows. If it did, I probably would bump it up a little bit. It's a fine show, and I think has that Porch I'm going to be talking about until the end of time. But it's got its time. It's got its moments. I think the encores ended up being pretty good. I think there was a little too much 10 in that section, but that's what you get from the 10 barrage. That's why you're patented that. I am at an 8 on this. This is perfectly cromulent. Nothing wrong with it. But if there was no Porch, I might dip it down to a 7.5. I will say that. But
okay, fair enough.
we are saved. We are saved by our Porch and Savior. So, okay, friends. Thank you for listening into this one. Next week, the plan is to prepare for Sydney. And by doing that, we're not doing another 2009 show. We are done with that for the time being. But we
Thank God.
are. Hey, it's the 15th anniversary. Put some respect on it.
Okay.
We are going to go back to 1995 and cover a Sydney show in 1995. They did 2 Sydney shows in 1995. I looked at them, and I know that one was in like a 40,000 seat stadium, and the other one was in a much smaller venue. And I looked at the sets, and I'm like, you know what? I like the smaller venue more than I like the bigger venue, because the bigger venue, I think you know what you're going to get, but I think you get some cool little surprises. As I mentioned, there's a guest that joins in on Needle and Damage Done. There's also a birthday celebration for a certain band member that was born in March. So yeah, you get a lot of pretty cool things happening in that one. So we're going to do Sydney. That was on March 10th, I believe the date is, 1995 for next week. Javier, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for coming in. And of course, every time you come in, I just want you to be here more often. So we're going to make sure that you are on here more often. How about, I don't know, we'll see you again in December for sure, but maybe even before that, who knows?
Thank you, my friend. Always a pleasure, even though that is 2009.
All right, you can pick your era next time. We'll see.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
We actually do need you on a 90s show at some point, because you have not accomplished that.
Yeah, let's do that.
There's a couple coming up in January. We'll talk.
All right.
We'll talk. So, all right. Well, if you listened to this and you enjoyed it and you enjoyed the conversation, this was a good, friendly conversation that we had here. A lot of good banter from this one. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to enjoy editing this one as well. Then you might want to subscribe to this podcast, as we have an episode out every single week. So if you want to know what's coming up next, head over to your podcast platform of your choice. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, just a few that are an example, even SoundCloud if you feel free, you want to go there. That's our hub, I suppose. But when you're at one of these places, if you see that there's a way that you can rate the podcast and you really like what we've been doing and you think we deserve a 5-star rating, then you can please feel free to share that with the universe. And if you want to go a step further, please leave a comment, let people know what you think about what we're doing. And yeah, that helps out the next load of people that are looking for Pearl Jam podcasts that cover live shows, which dwindles it down to us. There you have that. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. Just one more time to reiterate, it's gonna be a tough 4 years for a lot of us, and who knows what's to come. But I think we need to get through this one together instead of apart. So let's work on that. Again, I'm not perfect, but it's what I want to strive to work on. And if we can all work on it together, I think we can get somewhere. So let's focus our energy and not be enemies of each other, because we're just human beings, positive light, not negative reinforcement. As for next week, see you on the pod.
Unleash a stone more often.
Thank you very much.